What's up, everybody? Good afternoon. Welcome into Group Chat Football Live. I am Peter Ariz alongside D Money, and we are wrapping up week 2 in the transfer portal here. It's been a crazy couple weeks here. We appreciate everyone who's been following along with us on Group Chat Football Live. We've been going live every day and breaking it all down and talking about the comings, the goings, and it's been a lot of fun, D. And we got a lot of coaching movement that's been happening as well. But we're just in the middle of this thing. We've got another 8 days here for players to enter the portal. And then, of course, 5 more days after that for the teams that are in the playoffs right now.
Yeah, the movement does not stop. Every move impacts the other one. Even like the crystal balls, when someone's crystal ball to a team in recruiting, that often means that's a done deal. Here you see a crystal ball 1 second, like Jackson Arnold to Mississippi State, and then boom, next thing you know, he's at Auburn. So stuff's happening really fast. Want to evaluate the fits, the potential fits, and everything as these teams get reshaped and look a whole lot different than they did this year heading into next year.
We'll start today with the Branch brothers, D, the two brothers transferring from USC, Zachariah, the wide receiver, Zion, the safety. And this news hit earlier this week that they'd be transferring from USC. But today they are in Athens, Georgia, visiting the Bulldogs. At wide receiver for the Bulldogs, they're losing a lot this year. Arian Smith, Dom Lovett, Colby Young, all going to be gone after this year. Dane Key from Kentucky looks like he could be headed towards the Bulldogs. So that would be one replacement there. Zachariah Branch, of course, an explosive target. First couple years at USC, dealt with some injuries there this year. Probably not as productive as a lot of people would have expected this season. 47 catches, 503 yards, and a touchdown. Can be used in the return game as well. And then his brother Zion at safety on the other side of the ball there. Has the size, 6'2", 210, but really dealt with a lot of injuries during his time at USC. So how does this potential fit seem to you, D?
When I look at Georgia, obviously you lose Ladd McConkey last year. That has not been fully replaced at all. Looking at the offense, the offense does some good things, but where they really lacked were the super explosive plays. You look at plays over 40 yards, Georgia's 61st. Look at plays over 50 yards, Georgia's 105th. And this is a team that recruits at such a high level with such great athletes. You would think that they would make these kind of super explosive plays, I'll call them. If you want to talk about an explosive player, I mean, Zachariah Branch, 10-3 in the 100, 21 flat in the 200, 24 long jump, triple jump, 46 and 4 quarters. I mean, this guy is extremely, extremely twitched up. Got a lot of Tyreek Hill comparisons coming out of high school. I don't know if he's as strong as Tyreek Hill, but certainly that kind of movement, the change of direction, plus the straight line speed was more dynamic, I thought, as a freshman than as a sophomore. Played more of a receiver role as a sophomore, but as a freshman, one of the best punt returners in the country, first team All-America as a true freshman at returner. What role would he play at Georgia? Would he continue to progress as a receiver? Would he focus on being more of that weapon, that punt returner? I don't know, but I know the explosiveness plays a huge role in why Georgia's after him. They need a player like this. You know, as for Zion Branch, obviously the coaching is there at Georgia. They produce some of the best safeties in the country. Caleb Downs, who then went, or sorry, not Caleb Downs, Malachi Starks, who is going to the NFL, one of the best safeties in the country. So, you know, the developments there, they recruit freaks all the time. Janelle Aguero's in the mix there going forward. So they have guys both for that star, that big nickel position and the safety position. I don't know if Zion Branch necessarily fits in there. Is this decision going to be guided by going to the best school or going to the school where both players had the highest likelihood to play? Of course, Zachariah Branch will be able to play. Zion, not so sure. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about a few days ago, D, when some of these names came out. We mentioned how these guys were the first collegiate football players to sign an NIL deal with Jordan Brand as well. So was that going to be in play in terms of potentially going to a Jordan school? Georgia is the first trip. So it doesn't seem like that would necessarily be the move there, but something to watch nonetheless.
Yeah, it's
crazy how these sort of things come into play now during recruitments now.
100%. And again, I the thing I'm questioning here is the brother factor, because For Zachariah, Georgia to me makes perfect sense. I am not sure it makes as much sense for Zion, right? Look, again, I mentioned Malachi Starks. That's what it looks like at safety for Georgia. Zion was a big recruit, but he hasn't produced at that level. He's probably looking at him to be more as a depth player for the Georgia Bulldogs if that's where he goes. So we'll see if that's going to be the driving factor or if he's just going to go where the best team is and trust his ability to compete and win a job. We'll see. But I think Zachariah Branch, Georgia, makes a lot of sense as a returner, as sort of a gadget player, as someone, who brings you more than what Narian Smith brought you as far as the change of direction coupled with the explosiveness.
Quarterback movement, man. That's been the name of the game. That's been the big headlines here in the transfer portal. And another one on the move as Brendan Lewis has committed to Memphis. Of course, the Memphis Tigers losing Seth Hennigan, who's been a really, really solid quarterback during his career there at Memphis. Former UNLV quarterback Matthew Sluka was actually slated to visit Memphis this weekend. It doesn't look like that's going to be happening anymore as Brendan Lewis, who started his career at Colorado, 6'2", 207, almost 7,000 career yards, 43 passing touchdowns. Rough go at Nevada, not necessarily him personally, but the team the last couple of years, 2-10 and 3-9. So there hasn't been a whole lot of winning going on. I don't know if there's been, if it was a great roster over there around him. And he's coming into a situation now at Memphis, a program that's been bowl eligible for 11 straight seasons, finished the college football playoff rankings 25th this year. So obviously Ryan Silverfield over there at Memphis doesn't want to take a step back, bring in a veteran guy in Brendan Lewis to compete. You bring in a young guy as well, but is he going to be for sure the starter in your opinion?
Yeah, don't forget about Antoine Hill, top 200 player, big, athletic, super talented player, high 4-star, not the type of player that typically goes to Memphis out of high school. This is a loaded quarterback class. He is one of those who brings a lot to the table physically, arm, athleticism. So I do question whether the plan is to bring him along slower. He's not the most advanced as far as some of the mechanics, some of the just college level decision-making and progression. He's a big, athletic, super talented guy with a big arm. But, when players get bigger and he can't just outbody everybody, is he going to be able to make that quick adjustment? This to me is a hedge to say, look, if you come out and win this job, Antoine Hill, against a Brendan Lewis who has all that experience, it's your job and you're going to take the Memphis program to the top. But if you're not ready, you don't have to play right away and get ruined, right? You can wait. Now, the tricky part, the portal's there. And a guy like Antoine Hill going into the portal going into Memphis went on a limb. So do you tread lightly to make sure he doesn't jump in the portal? How much do you cater to his feelings knowing that if he jumps in the portal, he's going to get a lot of interest? And you were, I don't say lucky to get him because you recruited him and you earned that recruiting victory, but it was not a victory that was expected by the national pundits. And if Antoine Hill says, you know what, I came here expecting to play, I'm not playing, and jumps in the portal, he's gone. And now you don't have him going forward. So a delicate balance here, because it's very possible that a player with experience like Lewis just beats out Hill. And if he beats him on the practice field, do you play Hill anyways and have the players on your team say, hey, you're not giving us the best chance to win? Tricky situation there. I guess it's better to have more options at quarterback than not. But I'm a little bit surprised that they're not just handing the keys to Hill.
Yeah, and on a side note, it's going to be interesting to see where Matthew Sluka ends up from UNLV, because a lot of these starting spots that you could potentially slot into are kind of drying up, I would say. And when he left mid-season like that, you were thinking, hey, he's got to have some pretty big programs knocking on his door, trying to get him in for next season, because he was willing to take the red shirt and sit out and all that. But that'll be an interesting one to kind of track.
No question about that. So we'll see how it shakes up. The G5 is taking a whole new personality with this guaranteed playoff spot. So these are very, very big decisions that could impact football in January. And you don't always look at it that way, but they do. And you're seeing, again, highly ranked blue chip quarterbacks go to schools like Memphis. And now you're seeing good portal options like a Sluka, who ultimately, did not end up here. Most likely doesn't look like it. Brendan Lewis. Very, very interesting to see the development of the G5 programs in the portal era.
A program that's going to be big into development and definitely selling that development is North Carolina. Chapel Bill Belichick. Of course, it's been over a week now that he's had this position here with the Tar Heels, and they've had a very busy week in the transfer portal. We mentioned a few days ago as he signed his first player in the portal with Christo Kelly from Holy Cross. So we spoke about that on the page earlier this week. If you have not checked out that video, you can find it on our group chat sports page there. But we'll go down the list of names here as there's about 7 players we're about to talk about here. One thing that I see in common, again, we'll get into the specifics with each one here in just a second, but for the most part, NFL body types, you're not going to see with some of them a ton of production at their previous stops. But you understand with GM Michael Lombardi, with Bill Belichick, with the support staff that he's bringing in there around him, it's going to be a certain body type at each position. You're going to look for versatility. You're going to look for size, strength, length, all that. But that's what we see with a lot of the names that we're about to talk about here.
Yeah, you're not seeing a lot of highly rated transfers. The transfer portal rating system is a little, it's a developing product. You are seeing guys that were highly rated in high school in a lot of cases, big body types, high level body type, SEC. So Belichick obviously is trusting his development ability to get the most out of these guys and taking the body types instead of getting, the premium 4-star, 5-star transfers everybody wants, which, by the way, he's probably going to try to get those guys too. There was a report linking him to John Mateer saying that it was really North Carolina that finished second to Oklahoma with John Mateer, and that Belichick had Brady and Gronk and guys like that trying to sell Mateer on North Carolina. So that was an interesting development. But here's what Belichick told Pat McAfee before we get into the players. He said, "We're selling the program. Quite honestly, we have a lot of players and agents coming to us saying they want to be part of the program. Is there a spot for us? A lot of the agents representing players in the transfer portal are ones that we dealt with in the National Football League. A lot of those relationships are carrying over into college football." So that was interesting take that people are coming to them and they kind of know some of the players already from being in the pros. But let's start with the offensive line, Pete. Miles McVay, Alabama, offensive tackle, 6'6", 350, and he cut weight from high school to get down to 350. He's a big boy trying to get a handle on his weight. 4-star originally out of East St. Louis, Illinois, played left and right tackle, took an OV to North Carolina on Thursday, committed on campus, canceled his Syracuse OV. Didn't play a ton at Alabama, played 5 games, logged 94 snaps, but he's young. He's got 3 years of eligibility, and he was a Nick Saban recruit. So be right off the top, the body type there seems like the go with the Miles McVay.
Well, and you see in some of these pictures too, there's some fat to lose around the stomach there, right? If I'm gonna put it as bluntly as possible. But if you're Bill Belichick and that coaching staff, you're saying, man, we can chisel up this guy, and we see a real athlete underneath that, right? Even though, again, there hasn't been so much film on him. But the Saban familiarity, you better believe Belichick picked up the phone and called Nick Saban about him. But again, the body type, like you said, and understanding there's still some development to be had there, right? You're not getting a finished product, which at the offensive line spot, it's very rare you're going to find one that's fully developed in a year or two at the college level.
And you're seeing a similar story with the other tackle. So Chad Lindbergh, he's from Rice, but he's not a small school player. He's actually a Georgia signee, former top 140 recruit out of League City, Texas, Clear Creek High School, 6'6", 315, only played 20 games over 4 years at Georgia. So he's older than McVay. He was a teammate of UNC starting center Austin Blaske. Transfers to Rice, plays 7 games at left guard, then finishes the last 4 at left tackle. We'll see if he stays at tackle, goes back into guard. I'm sure that will be a battle, and they're just going to bring bodies in that can play and see who can last. But a similar to me story with McVay. He doesn't have the same body, the weight to lose, but a high-level SEC body type that at one point was evaluated as that kind of player. Hasn't worked out the way he's wanted, but has shown some flashes now when he's got a chance to play at Rice. Goes into the ACC. Less competition, certainly, than he had at Georgia for playing time. He's physically matured. He's older, and he's coming in ready to compete another guy that looks the part coming off the bus if you're putting together an offensive line.
Now you got the offensive line, and you got to go get yourself a quarterback. And this one, I think this is one of those that people, when they saw it, were like, okay, what does Bill Belichick see that maybe others don't? And that's quarterback Ryan Brown, who played at Purdue this last season, has 3 years of eligibility remaining. And the first thing you see with him is that size, 6'4", 215. Had a really crazy game against Illinois in an overtime loss for Purdue earlier this season. This, by the way, was not a great Purdue team, not a very good Purdue team at all, as their coach Ryan Walters is out now. They've had a ton of guys enter the portal, and Brown was not your full-time starter. Started 2 games for them. But again, what does Bill Belichick see in Ryan Brown?
Yeah, and like you mentioned, I think he was probably watching some highlights of that game against Illinois. 50-49 shootout, 18-26 passes, 297 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 118 yards on the ground. He was the player of the week nationally, the Sean Alexander Award player of the week. This is a player from our neck of the woods here, Venice, Florida, big-time program locally, 6'4", 210. He actually didn't sign out of Venice, even though he was Florida's 8A player of the year. Usually think Florida 8A player of the year, you're going to get a lot of attention, right? That's a pretty big honor in a pretty big state. But he does go on to Milford Prep in New York, which a lot of people go to. It's a well-established prep school. I believe LaShawn McCoy went to Milford. He had a lot of guys going through that program over the years. It is a prep school, doesn't count against your eligibility. Goes there, then goes to Purdue and does his thing in a limited role, but did have 2 starts, played 8 games, 3 seasons of eligibility. I think if you're Bill Belichick, you're saying, we have a young quarterback that we want to play. Excuse me. And we want to see what we got. And this is someone who has experience. He can run. He can throw. He can give us something as Brandon Baker develops and potentially becomes North Carolina's quarterback. Sorry, Bryce Baker. I apologize. As Bryce Baker develops, potentially as North Carolina's quarterback of the future, Bryce Baker, top 15 quarterback nationally, basketball player, dual threat guy that can run and throw, smart guy. He's going to come in expecting to play. He did not sign right on signing day. Bill Belichick came in and convinced him to sign after being named the North Carolina coach. So will Bryce Baker just walk into that starting job, or will he have to overcome Ryan Brown? You got competition in the room. That's what you want.
So I'll let you gather your voice there a little bit, D, as I talk about this next pickup here for North Carolina. And it's another guy who kind of has flown under the radar to this point of his college career, and that's Connor Cox, tight end from South Carolina. And this is a guy who only has 1 career reception for 9 yards. It was a touchdown, but a guy out of Jacksonville Bulls, which is one of the best programs in the state. You're looking at the size here, 6'6", almost 245, 250 range. Former star lacrosse player. We understand how Belichick likes to use his tight ends. He can't have enough of them. And again, tight end is one of those tricky positions where it's very tough to look at the box score and say this guy had X, Y, Z sort of impact on the game, because there's so many different ways to utilize them. You're getting a ton of size here. And again, someone else coming from a program in South Carolina where there could be more development on the bone there.
Yeah, former lacrosse player. That is right up Bill Belichick's alley. You're losing John Copenhaver. You're losing Bryson Nesbitt. Jake Johnson's your returning tight end. He's got 2 catches in his career. Tight end's a huge need. Certainly part of what Bill Belichick likes to do. Connor Cox has a size 6'6", 242. More of a lacrosse player in his youth, like we mentioned, so he's still getting going. Actually from Raleigh, North Carolina. Originally went to Cardinal Gibbons High before coming to Jacksonville Bull, so the local tie there. He went to South Carolina potentially to follow in the footsteps of another Jacksonville Bulls guy in Hayden Hurst, but didn't work out. Now he is at the University of North Carolina, and I think he's going to get a shot to compete.
Now, flipping over to the other side of the ball at defensive tackle, CJ Mims. And this might be the guy out of everyone on the list, D, that maybe doesn't have the NFL sort of body on the hoof. Listed at 6'2", 305, played at East Carolina, was actually committed to Wake Forest. Obviously, their coaching change as Dave Clawson stepped down and Jake Dickert is coming in. But he was essentially a rotational D-line piece for East Carolina, and North Carolina losing 60 linemen. So needing to bring in some bodies here.
No question about it, especially when you look at how Bill Belichick likes to coach. He likes big bodies more so than the speedy, angular pass rushers. He likes guys with some width. 6'2", 305. Shows you how quick the portal moves. Mims was committed to Wake Forest, quickly switches to UNC. North Carolina kid from Vanceboro, North Carolina, West Craven High School. Number 40 player out of high school in the state of North Carolina. So it was a 3-star player. Rotation for ECU the past 2 years. During those 2 years, 37 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. Big need position. This is not a player that is going to come in and be the superstar. North Carolina's had some superstars that didn't pan out, right? With Keyshawn Silver, Travis Shaw. So this is not that kind of athlete. This is somebody who's coming in to play a role, to be part of the rotation, to be a mature body type, local kid coming home, help you win games.
Now, this next one's very intriguing to me. The Melkart Abu Jaoud, and he's coming over from Delaware. You're looking at the body type with him, 6'5", 260, 265. And I'm going to pull up some of these clips that the size and the strength and the motor, which again, motor is something that is going to translate from one division to the next. It's going to be a step up in competition and athleticism and all sorts of things when you talk about the guys he'll face in the ACC here. But I really like this pickup here for Belichick.
Yeah, arrow pointing up guy, former walk-on. So you just see a lot of late bloomer traits. I agree. He looks the part. I mean, he looks long. He looks explosive. He definitely plays hard. Delaware Blue Hens, alma mater of Joe Flacco. Clearly a step up in competition, but this is a guy who can step up, and make plays as that former walk-on, originally from Newton, New Jersey. 2 years of eligibility. I'm excited to see this. You look at Jared Verse, right? I'm not saying he's Jared Verse, but going from Albany to the ACC ends up being a first-round pick, one of the better young pass rushers in the NFL. So it's not where you start, it's where you finish. And this is a guy, clearly the arrow is trending up. And before we move on to the next player, we got a comment here. UNC selling NFL, which is funny to me because NIL is top priority for most kids. I think they're selling both. They got a big NIL package. They're coming in late, so they haven't had the full game plan to use it. But as I understand, they're throwing money at players. So NIL, I don't think is going to be a problem. That's probably been reported widely, and just logical that Bill Belichick wouldn't take this job unless he had serious NIL assurances. So I think it's both that UNC is selling.
And then, of course, the special teams. Bill Belichick loves his special teams. And it looks like he got his kicker in Adam Samaha coming over from Michigan. He was actually the third stringer at Michigan. He's going to have 3 years of eligibility remaining, but we'll see how this one works out, D.
Yeah, third string kicker at Michigan. The starting kicker, Dominic Sakata, Big Ten kicker of the year. He's coming back, so you're not going to play there. Get an opportunity with Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick loves his specialists, like you said. He studies them. He drafts kickers. So I'm sure he took a look at this film. Starting kicker Noah Burnett jumped in the portal, so you needed a kicker. And this is someone with the leg. He made a 49-yard field goal in the Army All-America All-Star game. So he's a highly recruited guy, number 7 in the country coming out. The leg is there. Now you just got to hone it. I'm sure he's just dying for an opportunity, and he'll get one here in the ACC with UNC.
All right. So a couple more names to talk about here, D, is again, this is Group Chat Football Live, our daily show talking transfer portal across the country, coaching movement, and everything's connected, man. So it's always interesting to see some of these moves, some of these names that you maybe remember from the past or are familiar with. And next up here is someone that you and I are very familiar with from his time at the University of Miami as Chris Johnson Jr., running back from South Florida, Dillard High School originally, was a 4-star recruit, has been in Miami for a couple years, and he's going to continue the trend of former Hurricanes heading over to SMU and to play for Coach Rhett Lashley over there, who was the former Miami offensive coordinator. The interesting thing about this one, D, is that Chris Johnson does not have any ties to Rhett Lashley. A lot of the guys that you see coming over, were recruited by Lashley, maybe played for Lashley when he was at Miami. But you're getting one here in Chris Johnson, who by the numbers hasn't done much at Miami. But let's emphasize this right now. This is one of the fastest players in the entire country. You can look at the box score and say he hasn't done much, but man, you're talking about a guy who can absolutely take the top off a game with his track speed, a little skinny, right? You're not going to get someone who's breaking tackles left and right out there. But when you're talking about a guy who can just flat out go in a straight line, that is Chris Johnson.
Yeah, he might be he might be the fastest player in America. You look at the track times, this is high school. So some of these guys ran in college. And of course, when you train in college, your times go up. This is high school. 10.25 in the 100 meters, 20.40 in the 200 meters. You're talking about similar speed to Chris Johnson, CJ2K from the Tennessee Titans. In fact, better high school times in the state of Florida. Reggie Bush, Devon A-Chain. That's the neighborhood we're talking about. In many cases, faster than those guys in the 100 and 200 in high school. On the field, you haven't seen it all come together with him. I think he's still trying to slow the game down a little bit. When he was returning kicks for the Hurricanes, he often got in front of his blocks because he just didn't time it right. He was so eager to get going. He did have a couple big catches and runs for touchdowns, but more flashes, didn't really put it together there. But you look at the fit with SMU. SMU took Jalen Rooster Knighton a couple of years ago. This is a running back from South Florida, under 200 pounds, speedster, originally from the University of Miami, transferred out. Okay, so that's the profile. Go and get Brashard Smith, who played receiver for Miami, but played running back for SMU, under 200 pounds, from South Florida, originally at the University of Miami. Goes to SMU, and he's an all-conference player, one of the best running backs in the country. So Chris Johnson is from South Florida. He's from Fort Lauderdale. He's under 200 pounds, our running back, and he's from originally the University of Miami. The pattern's pretty clear to see. You put Chris Johnson into this wide-open offense. He is faster than those two players, I think, by a significant amount. Brashard Smith's really explosive, but talk about speed. The speed of Chris Johnson, long speed, is just totally different and unique. So if they can hone that, if the game can slow down for him, I think he could be a truly impactful player, even more so than Brashard Smith, who is one of the best players in the ACC. You look at Chris Johnson, and I'm talking about not this Chris Johnson, the one that went to East Carolina and then the Titans. He didn't blow up until his senior year of college. He was a mediocre back. Then his senior year, he became great, got drafted first round, and became an all-pro. Sometimes for these really fast guys, the game's got to slow down. They got to learn how to use their speed. Chris Johnson, Rhett Lashley, SMU, perfect fit, an opportunity for him to find his speed. And if it clicks, this guy will be one of the most dangerous players in all of the ACC.
And D, just looking at, because we do have a little insight on his time at Miami, and if for the SMU fans that are listening to this right now, why would you say it didn't necessarily work out at Miami to the extent that you think it could work at SMU?
First of all, Miami had the number one offense in the country, right? So they weren't looking for new players. I mean, what the formula they had this particular year was working. They were the number one offense in the country. It's a hard unit to break. You had Damian Martinez, Mark Fletcher, two very big and powerful backs. You brought in Jordan Lyle, who according to On3 was the number one running back in the country last year, nationally as a high school player. He comes in and shows a lot of flashes. Those guys are all big backs. So you didn't really need that infusion of game-breaking speed and to get this guy up to speed with the reps, because you had the best offense in the country. You weren't trying to develop Johnson necessarily. They did try early in the season to find ways to get him the ball, even as that explosive offense, but the timing wasn't really there. And I think ultimately they said, if it isn't broke, let's stop trying to cater to one player and let's just play ball. That should not be an indictment of what this guy can be moving forward. I think when he gets more reps, he'll get that timing down and he'll start breaking. I'm talking about 60, 70, 80-yard runs. That's the type of player this guy is. Watch his high school film against very good competition. St. Thomas Aquinas, Miami Central, the best teams, Chaminade, the best teams in South Florida. He's running against those teams and making huge plays. I think this guy has some of the most upside of anybody in the portal.
Good get there for SMU, who, I expect them to continue to build on what they've done this year, D, without a doubt. Obviously, great season for them with Rhett Lashley, and I think great things to come for them as we move forward here in this NIL era. So, a program that has been absolutely on fire here the last few days, and right now have the number one portal class, according to many, Texas Tech, and they have continued their impressive portal haul. Head coach Joey McGuire, 8-win season for the Red Raiders this season. And we broke down all of these pickups that they had the other day. So if you are new to this channel, Group Chat Sports, and the show Group Chat Football Live, go check out that video from a few days ago where we broke down one by one these pickups for Texas Tech. But we have some new ones to talk about here today. And the first one we'll start with is Quinton Joyner, running back coming over from USC. And he was a guy who, he's a big play back. He's a yards per carry monster. Didn't really get that many touches this season, but still had around 500 yards this season.
Yeah, by the way, Coach McGuire shouted out the Matador Club. That is the official NIL collective of Texas Tech. So there's a lot of juice with Texas Tech. Got a lot of rec 'em in our comments. Really excited watching it. I think the college football world in general is really excited about not just what's happening on the field as Texas Tech gets ready for the Liberty Bowl against Arkansas next week, but this portal class in particular. So you mentioned Quinton Joyner, 5'11", 216, played at USC, 476 yards, doesn't jump out, but then you look at the yards per carry, 7.6. Also at 6.9 yards per carry as a freshman. You watch him against Penn State, had one of the most dynamic, explosive runs that USC had in a while against Penn State. So this is somebody that has a ton of juice, and he's a big prospect, 4-star prospect out of Manor, Texas, about a 6-hour drive from Lubbock. Track background, kind of unique because he's a 10,900 meter sprinter. That makes sense. You see him run, but he was also a 49-foot shot putter. So he had some explosion coming through his body there. He's replacing a 1,500-yard back in Taj Brooks, right? We know that that's going to be the big story of the offseason for Texas Tech. Guess where Taj Brooks is from? Manor, Texas. So you go to the same high school, same town to replace Taj Brooks. Quinton Joyner is somebody that a lot of teams really, really liked, and he brings a lot of explosiveness to the table. And in this offense, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. You got the passing game with Baron Morton. You've been adding a ton of beef up front in the portal. Offensive line, we talked about that last show. Adding a guy like this, Quinton Joyner, is going to really supercharge this offense and I think give them a chance to be potentially the favorite in the Big 12.
Had a big run on the road on a trick play against Penn State with him and Zachariah Branch earlier this season. Now, on the other side of the ball, they're adding a very, very experienced player who's been at a few programs now. This is going to be stop number 4 for him in Romello Height, who started his career at Auburn, then went to USC, then Georgia Tech this last year. And this is someone who we talk a lot about veteran defensive linemen. This is a pass rusher, gives you a lot of length. Last season with Georgia Tech, had a solid year, 34 tackles, 7 TFLs, 2.5 sacks, a couple forced fumbles, and an interception. But this is someone that, again, you and I are familiar with because during his recruitment was actually committed to Miami, ends up at Auburn. He's been everywhere, and he's played pretty much everywhere he's been. So this is just another move for him, ranked as the number 5 edge player in the portal.
Yeah, we've seen the whole journey, right? From being committed to Miami, going to Auburn, then USC, then Georgia Tech, now right back here to Texas Tech. Made a big impact against Miami this year, clinching the game on a strip sack, 34 tackles last year, 7 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, which is number 1 in the conference, and 1 INT. Twitched up guy, former linebacker, not, tremendous length, but plays hard, somewhat stiff and straight lineage, but twitchy and effective. He's pretty good against the run as well, even though he's not the biggest guy. He's got power, and he's physically mature. He's been in college for a long, long time. So Romello Height is somebody that I think has a chance to be very, very impactful at Texas Tech. You do wonder why he bounced around so much, but when he goes places, he plays, right? So it's not like he's on the bench at these places. And I'm really surprised he only had 6.5 sacks in his career because he's had a lot more pressures than that. He's able to affect the quarterback. He can do some things. He's not going to be like a Tyree Wilson type dominant pass rusher for Texas Tech. But I think every team wants guys that can get after the passer. This is someone that's done it in the old Pac-12, in the SEC, in the ACC, and now here in the Big 12. He'll get a shot.
And then another defensive player that Texas Tech added, Terrian Grant, cornerback coming over from Purdue, who started for Purdue as a true freshman this season. He's originally from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, home of Middle Tennessee State there, and someone who's coming in with a lot of length. It's interesting, man. We feel like we talk about a lot of these Purdue guys. Obviously, Ryan Walters leaving, but it seemed like there was a decent amount of talent on that roster for as bad of a season as they had, and they've been recruiting pretty well. But Terrian Grant, add him to the mix here at Texas Tech as another really talented guy with multiple years of eligibility. And that's a common theme with some of these guys that they're picking up.
Yeah, this is somebody with a lot of traits. This is not like an overachieving kind of guy. This was a highly rated. He was the number 17 corner in America 93 rank overall as far as the rating, 157th ranked player in the country, a solid 4-star, 6'2" wingspan, ran a 10.700 meters. So all the traits you want at corner. I think with this particular player, Texas Tech's getting him on the way up, traitsy guy that they're going to develop. They need corners in this conference. They're going against the bet. Look at the receivers that were in the Big 12 this year, right? When you're talking about McMillan, when you're talking about Travis Hunter, right? You're talking about some of the best wide receivers in the nation. Beck from Texas, or Christian from TCU. So there's some really, really good receivers in this conference. You need corners to keep up. This is one that has the length and the speed to help you do the job. Cornerslayers are very hard to recruit out of high school. It's amazing Purdue got him in the first place. Guys like this usually go to like a Tennessee or an SEC school, maybe a big ACC school. Goes to Purdue, now at Texas Tech. Traits are going to play. Excited to see his development. Great pickup. And this is a complete team that is being built in the portal. It's not just one position being loaded up. We're seeing O-line. We're seeing D-line, big D-line. We're seeing corners. We're seeing explosive running backs. We are seeing every single spot upgraded, pass catching tight ends in this portal class, 14 players, and both not just quantity, but also quality with Texas Tech.
They're buzzing in Lubbock, man. So Texas Tech, what a great run it's been for them in the transfer portal. And look, with as many guys that they landed with, a lot of them being pretty highly rated in the portal, it's going to be tough for anyone to knock them off that number one spot. We'll see as these days go on here, these weeks move on, if there's any more movement in the rankings there. But for now, Texas Tech with the number one class in the transfer portal, and we'll continue to track that sort of movement here on Group Chat Football Live every day, Monday through Friday here. Group Chat Sports. Follow, like, subscribe. We appreciate everyone who's been with us here, man. In these 2 weeks, we've grown a tremendous amount already, and that is thanks to you all who've been following with us and hitting that like button and subscribing for us.
Appreciate everybody. We're going to keep on bringing you the latest. This is your one-stop hub for all the transactions that are happening in college football. And the transaction season starts in January and it ends in January. It is all year long. Portal's cooking now. Coaching's cooking now. Recruiting's about to heat up. It doesn't stop, and we'll be here every single step of the way. So we will see you all on Monday.